Okay, we'll start lying down. So come to a comfortable position on your back, if that feels okay for you. So that could be with legs outstretched. It could be with knees bent, maybe exploring resting the knees together, taking the feet out wider so that the knees can really fall in against each other. Having the hands, the arms resting wherever feels comfortable. Taking some time to settle. If it feels comfortable too, then closing the eyes or softening the gaze. And then starting to use the breath to help you bring your attention inwards. Just noticing on each inhale where the space is in the body, perhaps where there is movement or where it just feels like you're breathing into some spaciousness in the body. So you're not actively looking to work this, just seeing if you can observe through the breath where the space is that you breathe into. And seeing if on the exhale you can notice where there might be a sense of softening and releasing towards the ground a little more. So perhaps that might be the areas of the body that are in direct contact with the ground, but you might notice in other parts of the body that sense of softening and releasing. If it feels helpful to you and you haven't already, then you could extend the length of the inhale and the exhale, just taking a bit more time over each, so you're not working the breath any harder. There's still a sense of easefulness in the breath. And we can think in our yoga practice about the idea of that, you know, whatever kind of practice we're taking in our yoga, whether that's working with the breath or with physical postures or anything else, and that really what we're always kind of working with or playing with is finding that balance. And we might think of that in all kinds of ways. So we might think of it about finding a balance between effort and ease, finding a balance between finding openness and spaciousness in the body alongside finding strength and stability and a sense of holding things in place, a balance between energizing and releasing or relaxing. And thinking about the breath, we can perhaps think about that as one of the simplest, purest ways in which we explore that interplay between the two. If we think about the inhale as typically being about exploring that space, and also about finding energy, and typically thinking about the exhale as finding release and also finding a sense of groundedness, rootedness. So as we take our practice today, I invite you to just keep that idea of finding balance in mind, and perhaps just noticing where that comes up for you. So again, not working hard to look for it, but just noticing, observing where, if anywhere, that awareness of playing with or working on that balance between those two kinds of energies, if you like. Let your breath return to its natural rhythm now. Just allow it to settle. Take a moment to just be with the breath. Just notice the breath as it comes in, as it goes out. And if you want to set an intention for your practice today, then just take a moment to do that now. And now, if you haven't already, then bend your knees and bring soles of the feet to the mat. And just see if you might be able to just have a sense of drawing the lower back into the mat a little more. You could either press the feet into the mat to help support that, and maybe a gentle drawing of navel towards spine. So not working the abdominal muscles or the back muscles hard here, but just see if you can find a little bit more active sense of connection between the lower back and the mat. And then use an inhale to pick the feet up and draw the knees in towards the chest. And then you can take hands around the knees or the shins so that you can just hug the knees in towards you a little more. We're going to take a gentle twist to each side. So if you know that it's helpful for you to have support underneath the knees whilst you do that, either if the ground seems a long way away from you when you take this twist, which we'll do in a moment, or if taking the knees over to one side causes the opposite shoulder to be quite far off the ground, then I'd really recommend, if you don't already, explore using some support, but placing some props to your right now, so that they can support the knees as they come over. And then when you're ready, use an exhale to rest the arms out on the floor at shoulder height. Take an inhale. And then as you exhale, draw the knees over to the right. The knees come to rest either on the ground or on the whatever kind of height and whatever kind of prop you put in place. That could be anything, a rolled up blanket, a cushion, a few cushions even. Use your next exhale to see if you can allow the shoulders to soften and release a bit more. So particularly the left shoulder here. Take a few more breaths here. See if you can come back to that idea of using the breath, using the inhale to notice where the space is in the body that you can breathe into, noticing where you might find a little bit of sense of expansion in the body, perhaps expansion between the ribs, maybe across the chest, and using the inhale to find where you can soften, coming back to that idea of softening and releasing towards the ground a little more. So maybe through the shoulders, particularly the left shoulder, maybe the face can soften. Maybe there's a sense of the hips releasing towards the ground a little more. And whatever you're noticing, some of that might be, you might have a sense of it being a physical movement of some sort, even if it's just a small one. But other areas might simply be an energetic sense of just releasing, or at least thinking about releasing. So maybe it's noticing where there's tension in the body. And even if it doesn't feel like anything's happening on the exhale to release that tension, just focusing on it, thinking about it, visualizing a release of tension there. Inhale back to center now, drawing these back into the chest, taking, whenever you're ready, once you're back in center, take any props that you're using over to the other side. And then when you're ready, if you've moved hands on back onto the legs, then exhale the arms back down onto the ground. Take an inhale. And then exhale the knees over to the other side, so over to the left. So we're working with the support of the ground here. So as you focus in the exhales on noticing that release, then another thing that you can do to help with that is to notice the points of the body that are in contact with the ground. And from there, maybe having a sense of what is releasing down into those parts of the body as they release down into the ground. So again, staying here with the breath, using the breath to find that balance between finding space and finding release. And as we work with this twist and with other twists or revolved kinds of poses that we'll work with today, we can continue to think about this idea of balance. So twists are a lovely way of exploring that balance between those two kinds of energies. As we work with twists, we, as well as promoting blood flow and improved circulation around the spinal area, by working with the spinal area, we are of course working with the central nervous system. And twists can offer us kind of almost a natural balancing effect here. So in practical terms, taking twists means that if what you need in that moment is to be energized in some way, then twists will offer you that. If what you need is to find a bit more release, to kind of let go of some energies a bit more, then twists will offer you that. On your next inhale, draw back to center, hug the knees into the chest. And then we'll make our way to all fours. So just slowly making your way up to all fours in whatever way feels right for you. Perhaps you might roll to one side and push yourself up. Just take your time. You could do this with eyes closed or with gaze soft, so that you're really kind of conscious of each movement that you make, where you're taking your weight and how you're moving. And we'll meet in all fours, fingers spread wide, shoulders above wrists, hips above knees. If for any reason all fours doesn't feel right for your practice today, then just a reminder, you can always take the cat-cow movements we're about to take from a seated position as well. And just take your time to ease into your cat-cow movements when you're ready. So as you, so do it in your own time, but I'll just talk through some stuff as well. So as you're inhaling, you're drawing the shoulders back to create space for the chest to draw forward, tailbone to tip up or draw back if you're seated. Exhaling, rounding the spine up towards the ceiling, push the ground away from you with your hands as you let the shoulder blades draw apart, tailbone draws down, head drops. So keep going at your own pace, matching the movement to the breath, extending the inhale and the exhale if that feels comfortable. Not working the breath harder, just giving you a bit more time to explore. And as we take our cat-cows, we're bringing the spine into back into a symmetrical position, which is always a nice way of resetting after taking a twist. But also the cat-cow movement can offer us that similar kind of balancing effect that twists do. So we can think of the cow position as we draw shoulders back, chest forwards, as being that typically, what we'll typically think of as an energizing kind of a pose. And then we're balancing that with the cat position, which, although not quite a forward fold, we've got a similar kind of thing going on in the spine. So we can think of it as much more of a releasing and softening energetic effect. And just taking a few more rounds. Yeah. Lovely. Okay, coming back to stillness. And then drawing on an exhale, drawing your bum back to your heels and coming to sitting on your heels if that feels okay for you. If not, if you have a chair available, then great. If you can come to sitting in a chair with feet firmly planted, knees facing forwards and together. If that's not available as an option to you, then you could come to sit with legs crossed instead. But ideally, we're looking at keeping the hips closed if you can, just to prepare for what we'll be working on. So once you're comfortably settled, just take a moment, just use the breath to settle a little more internally, a few rounds of breath to start to find on the inhales, not just that spaciousness, but a sense of lengthening. So you could develop that sense of inhaling up through the spine, feeling the vertebrae of the spine, or visualizing the vertebrae of the spine, and visualizing increased distance between each vertebrae of the spine. Using the exhales to find a sense of softening and increasingly experiencing that softening as a sense of rooting down into the ground. So rather than that sense of rooting down being an effortful action, instead it becomes something that you experience as a sense of releasing down into the ground. But from that release and that greater sense of connection with the earth, with the ground, you're then creating a place of stability, a kind of anchor, if you like, from which you can then explore a bit more length and space in the upper body. On your next inhale, draw your arms forwards and up. Take a few breaths here, continuing with this theme of finding length on the inhale, finding release on the exhale. So a sense of breathing up through the spine, but also bring some focus now to the side body, a sense of the side body lengthening. As you exhale, can you soften through the shoulders a little more? Feel a sense of that softening coming down through the sit bones, but also of the hips releasing down. So again, more of an energetic sense of that happening rather than a physical sense. But from that groundedness, rootedness through the hips, you can find a sense on the inhale of the waist and the side body lengthening up and out of the top of the hips. Turn your right palm to face outwards. Exhale, sweep the right arm out to the side and down. Bring the right hand to rest on the ground, or if you're sitting on a chair, then against the side of the chair. Take another inhale, see if you can reach up with the left fingertips a little more, find a bit more lengthening in the left side of the body. As you exhale, maybe see how it feels to take the fingertips over towards the right a little more, if that feels helpful in finding a bit more length in the left side body. If it just kind of causes the right side body to kind of collapse down and or the left sit bone to lift up or not be so rooted, then draw back a little. Any movements that you're taking with the hand, with the arm and with the hand is in order to find more length in the side body. Just taking a few more breaths here. Come back to the breath, breathing into the space that you're finding here. As you breathe out, find that rooting down, that releasing down through the sit bones, the hips, the legs, the feet. Now inhale the right arm back up. Turn the left palm to face out and exhale, sweep the left arm out to the side and down. Inhaling, reaching up with the right fingertips. As you exhale, can you feel that rootedness down through the right sit bone, the right hip in particular? On your next exhale, maybe seeing how it feels to take the fingertips over towards the left a little more. Bring your focus back to the right side body, and particularly the right waist. So that point where it kind of comes, meets the top of the hip bone. A sense of lengthening up out of there. So focusing on that on the inhale, but then keep using each exhale to find where you can soften. So maybe the right shoulder, if that's drawn right up towards the ear. Feel that softening coming all the way down through the sit bones, keeping you rooted, keeping you grounded. Now inhale the left arm back up, reaching up. As you next exhale, draw round towards the right. So we're coming into a gentle seated twist here. And then you can let the hands drop down. Right hand comes to rest by the right hip, or it might be a bit further round, but keep it close to the body. Left hand rests wherever feels comfortable. See if you can keep your belly and your chest aligned here. So don't let the more mobile chest and upper back race as far around to the right as it can. Instead, come back to wherever the belly and the lower back comes to and work there. And that way you're activating and really encouraging involvement of the deeper abdominal muscles and of the lower back muscles to support you in your twist here. And once you've focused on that for a moment, then come back to the breath. And come back to exploring space and release in the body in just the same way as when we were symmetrical with the spine. So the more space we can create in the upper body, then the more space we have to explore that twist, that kind of twisting around the spine almost. So inhaling, finding space up through the spine, noticing the space in the side body. Exhaling, can you soften through the shoulders a little more and feel that softening coming all the way down through to the sit bone. Lovely. Inhale back to center, sweep the arms up. And then as you exhale, drawing round to the left, so again, see if you can keep belly and chest aligned as you do that. Let the hands drop. Left hand is pressing into the ground, somewhere close to the body. So keeping it close to the body helps to avoid collapsing your weight into the left hand and kind of collapsing the length that you're still maintaining in the left side of the body here. So kind of as you're turned round to the left, easier to feel that length in the right side body perhaps, but just check that the left side body still has some length too. Come back to the breath, come back to that sense of inhaling, finding length in the spine, finding that length in the side body, exhaling, softening through the shoulders, down to the sit bones, the legs, the feet. So by bringing the awareness a little more inwards and using the breath in this way, we're encouraging ourselves as well to kind of not stay up here in the mind, where the mind might be saying, go on, see if you can get a bit further around, see if you can get a bit further around now. But if we come back to the breath and work with the body in this way, then I hesitate to say it because it causes us to kind of jump ahead to think about those outcomes. But you'll probably find with your practice that you'll then find yourself surprised that physically where you might have got to by the end without aiming for it, as you allow more release and more softening into body, as you encourage more space and more length. Inhale back to center, sweep the arms up. turn both palms to face outwards, and then exhale, sweep the arms out to the sides and down. Lovely. And then you might want to take a few shoulder rolls, one way, the other way. Lovely. Okay, so we're going to come up into, in a moment, we'll come up into downward dog for a few breaths and then make our way into a standing forward fold. Please feel free to take other options here, depending on what feels right for your practice today. So, for example, for the downward dog, you could take an extended child's pose for a few breaths. For the standing forward fold, you could, if coming into it from downward dog isn't a good option for you, then you could make your way into it from standing. One other option to consider is, you know, which is kind of nice for both of these, is to, but particularly for the downward dog, is to use a wall. So you can still kind of find a lot of downward dog action by pressing against the wall. So you're likely press your hands into the ground and sort of push the ground away. You push the wall away, hips drawing back, so you're still finding that length in the spine. So that can be quite a nice alternative for downward dog as well. Another nice alternative for a standing forward fold would be if you're in a chair, you're seated, then you can bring the chest forwards and down, belly towards thighs, and then let yourself go like that. Okay, so coming into your downward dog now, if that's feeling right for you, so from your all fours, take hands a bit further forward, make sure fingers are spread nice and wide, tuck the toes, and then if you haven't already, inhale the hips up and back. And wherever you are now, bring the focus back to the breath. And just see if, just as we did at the start, see if you can use the inhales to notice where the length is that you can explore, where the space is that you can explore in the body. So that might be inhaling along the length of the spine. It might be noticing spaciousness in the back body or the front body. You know, with downward dog, you've kind of got all of those possible options available to you, or downward dog variations. But so there's no right thing to do here. Just noticing, see if you can trust in the breath to help you find that spaciousness, that length in the body, and also using the exhale to find a sense of release, of rootedness. So even if we think about downward dog, pressing the ground away from you, which is a strong action, a strong physical action, but can you use the exhale to help you find a sense of that actually being a kind of a releasing into the ground, even if you're just thinking it, even at the same time as experiencing it as still being a strong physical action, just seeing if on each exhale you can find even just a small sense of that actually being a releasing and a softening. If you're in downward dog, start to walk your hands back towards your feet now. So we're making our way into our standing forward fold. So if you're taking another pose at the moment, then make your way into either a standing forward fold, or if you've got the chair option available to you, then you could take that fold from seated. So if you're in your standing forward fold, then hips are still lifting high just as they do in downward dog. See if you can now start to use the inhales to find length in a different way. So if you're in your standing forward fold, having a sense of inhaling energy up from the ground through the feet, all the way up the legs to the hips lifting high. So those inhales are really encouraging the activeness through the feet, the legs, the hips, that give you the stability and space that you need to then let the upper body go. So navel towards spine as well, if you can, to create a bit more space. And then use the exhales to find that sense of softening and release. So releasing down through the shoulders, the head, the neck, letting all of that go. Maybe extending the exhale here if that feels good. On your next inhale, come to a halfway lift. So palms of the hands resting somewhere on the front of the legs so that your upper body is at right angles to your legs. You can have a bend in the knees, the legs don't have to be straight here. Focus on drawing the shoulders back, creating space for the chest to draw forward. And although we're orientated differently here, see if you can still experience this as the spine lengthening and the side body lengthening. So the kind of anchor from which they're lengthening, or the point of reference, is still the hips. So it's almost a sense of the hips kind of drawing back a little more, which you could also experience as a broadening at the very lower back, a sense of the outer edges of the hips drawing away from each other a bit more. And as they draw back, there's a sense of the side body, the spine, drawing away, lengthening away from the hips, lengthening away from that anchor point of the hips. Great. Exhale, back down to your forward fold for a moment. Bring your hands onto your hips. Have a bend in the knees. As you inhale, hinge from the hips, draw the chest forwards and up. Exhale, release the arms. Okay. So just come to standing in the middle of your mat in your mountain pose. And just take a moment here, settling into mountain pose. So take a moment to check in with those kind of physical cues that you might give yourself, checking that there's a sense of weight coming down evenly through each foot and through both feet. Tailbone drawing down. Maybe bringing a bit more broadness across the chest with that drawing back and down of the shoulders, back of the neck long. If it feels comfortable to, then close your eyes or otherwise soften your gaze. Cast your gaze down. If you set an intention at the start of your practice, just take a moment to recall that now. Okay. And then opening the eyes or lifting the gaze. Bring your hands onto your hips and step your feet out wider now so that the feet are a little more than the legs length apart. So toes are still facing in the same direction as when you were in Tadasana, in mountain pose. So outer edges of the feet ideally are parallel with the short edges of the mat, assuming that you're kind of pointing towards the long edge of your mat, as I am. Get your hands on your hips and see if you can just take a moment to go through that same process that you just did with mountain pose. So checking in with the feet, the weight coming down through the feet, making any adjustments there, noticing, it will be a different experience. The weight will undoubtedly be coming down into the feet differently. So just seeing what you can do to make any adjustments so there's still a sense of the weight coming down as evenly as you can through both feet and through each part of each foot. So for example, if it feels like the weight is really dumping into the outer edge of the foot, can you press the ball of the foot down a little more? If it's coming through into the front of the feet, can you weight down through the heels a bit more, or vice versa? And then can you draw the tailbone down if that's kind of drawn back, which it may well have done kind of almost automatically? Can you draw the tailbone down a bit more, maybe navel in towards spine? Notice the hips hugging in a bit more as you do that. And then can you maybe soften through the shoulders a bit more? So in a moment, we'll come into a forward fold. So don't come into it yet, but we'll come into a forward fold from here. probably should have mentioned before, so you could grab them before, but if you have any props like yoga bricks or anything available, then you might want to grab those, but you absolutely don't need them to do this practice. It's just an invitation if you have anything handy. And the other thing to mention is if this doesn't feel right for your practice today, so particularly watch out if you've got anything going on with the lower back, then again, you could use the wall as your prop and explore, rather than going all the way down as you will in a moment. You could explore that same kind of action we were talking about before, but you've got legs wide this time, and you might actually find that you can explore coming down a little more freely than if you're exploring it without the wall. So one to explore at some point anyway, probably. Okay, so hands on the hips. Take an inhale, see if you can draw the shoulders back and down, bring a bit more lift to the chest, finding length in the upper body. As you next exhale, keep pressing into the feet. As you hinge from the hips, draw the chest forwards and down. Let it come to wherever it comes to. When you reach your next inhale, see if you can have a sense of the chest lifting a little more so that you're keeping the spine long here. So you're not contracting the spine. And then as you exhale again, maybe exploring whether you might release the chest down a little more. But as we're releasing the chest, what we're really exploring is what's going on around the hips and the inner thighs, the groins here. So that's what we're exploring in terms of release, really. The chest, we're not asking the chest to get anywhere. We're just exploring on each exhale whether we can find a little more release. And again, coming back to this idea of the exhale encouraging a softening and a release rather than an effort. Slide your hands down the outsides of your legs. And if it feels okay, you can just let the chin tuck a little, let the neck, the head hang heavy. So there's still on each inhale a sense of bringing that lift to the chest. You're keeping the spine long. Exhale, exploring a little more release. Super. Okay, bring your right hand to rest on the outside of your left leg now, wherever it comfortably comes. So that might be the thigh area, the knee, the calf area. Just see where it feels comfortable, and bring your left hand onto your hip, onto your left hip. Take an inhale, see if you can still find that sense of the chest drawing forward a little. And then as you exhale, just explore drawing round to the left. So we're coming into another revolved or twisting pose here. And just staying here for a few breaths. So see if you can notice how this feels compared to, for example, when we were taking that seated twist, perhaps noticing that relationship or connection between belly and chest. But also thinking about it as we're in this position, thinking about keeping that length in the spine and in the side body. So thinking about how it felt when we were in our halfway lift, the idea of the spine and the side body lengthening out of the hips here. So keep the hips lifting high, and in doing so, they're kind of drawing back a little. You don't have to kind of try and make them draw back, but by keeping the hips lifting high, that's sort of happening. Lovely. Exhale back to center now. So you can move the right hand back onto the right leg. Left hand can slide down the outside of the left leg again. Take a couple of breaths here. And then move the left hand to the outside of the right thigh, right hand onto the right hip. Take an inhale, bring that lift to the chest. Exhale, drawing round towards the right. And sorry, I didn't say on the other side, but if it feels more helpful to move the right hand round onto the lower back, so the heel of the hand is resting on the lower back, then you could explore doing that. And again, see if you can, on your inhales, find that length in the side body, the spine, but also noticing the spaciousness across the chest here. Exhaling, finding that rootedness. So again, we're asking a lot of that. We're doing a lot of physical work with the feet, the legs, the hips here. Can you use the exhales to just help that feel a little bit more like softening and releasing? Wonderful. Exhale back to center. Super. If it feels comfortable to here, you could explore just letting, if this feels okay, particularly for the back, you could explore just letting this go a bit more now, so that rather than working on keeping the spine long with the inhale, you're rounding the spine a bit more, and as you might in a normal standing forward fold, just letting things hang down a bit more. And you could use a prop here in particular to, like, if you have anything that you could take underneath the hands, or if the hands come to the floor, then that's fine, but just don't kind of strive for the floor if it's not already there, but just finding a bit more release here. If it feels more comfortable, particularly on the back, to stay with this more kind of lengthened spine version, then obviously do that. And of course, there's always the wall to play with as well. Just a few more breaths, maybe lengthening the exhale if that feels good. Great. Now take your hands so that they move your hands so that they can reach the floor. So move them as far forward as you need to, so that it just needs to be fingertips, doesn't need to be the whole palm of the hands, but as far forward as you need to, so that they can comfortably make contact with the floor. And once you've got them there, so they're about shoulder width apart, once you've got them there, bring a bit more weight into the hands so the feet are a little lighter, and then bring a bend to the knees. Once the knees are bent, then you can creep the hands back towards you until you feel comfortable in bringing hands back onto the hips. And then use an inhale to hinge from the hips, draw the chest forwards and up. Exhale, release the hands down. And then you can heel toe the feet back together. So I just recommend heel toeing them back together rather than doing sudden big steps, so you don't kind of run the risk of overstretching anything that we've just eased out. Maybe have a little bit of a shake out, that feels good. Okay, so we're going to make our way down to seated, so you can either come straight down to seated. If it feels right for your practice right now to take a flow, then feel free to take any kind of flow that you want to come down. So that could be from standing down to a forward fold, back to downward dog, then lowering the knees and coming down that way. So feel free to take a flow or to simply make your way down to seated. And once you're seated, we'll be taking the legs out long. If you have a little bit of height you can place under the sit bones, then I'd recommend doing that to help keep the lower back long. Only needs to be a small amount of height to help you here. And so legs are together, feet are together. Actively push the heels away from you. On your next inhale, bring a bit more lift to the chest, so you're keeping the spine long. And then bring your hands alongside your hips. So fingertips are facing, are pointing towards the direction that your feet are in. Thumbs are pointing behind you. Use a slight press into the ground with your hands or your fingertips to help draw the shoulders back and down to bring a bit more lift to the chest. Just taking a few more breaths here. So again, we're coming to a pose where the spine is symmetrical after taking some twists. And so coming into our staff pose. Now exhale, release the hands, roll the shoulders forward, so release the shoulders. Keep pushing out through the left heel, so keep the left leg active. And take the hands behind the right side, draw the right knee in towards you, and press the right foot down into the mat. So a few options for you here. You can either keep the right foot where it is, pressing down into the mat. If it feels comfortable to, you could explore taking the right foot to the other side, so it's outside the left thigh. If you do that, make sure that the right foot can still fully and actively make contact with the ground. So wherever your right foot is, there's a sense of pressing down into the ground, almost as if you're trying to kind of use that foot to stand yourself up. So if that's compromised by taking the foot over to the outside of the left thigh, then bring it back. If it is the outside of the left thigh, then you might explore, or if this is in your practice, take this, bending the left knee and bringing the left foot to just rest to the outside of the right hip. Again, if that compromises your ability to keep that contact between the right foot and the ground, then straighten the leg again. So all of these are great ways of setting up for a twist. If you take and then it's not that any is more advanced than the other, make sure you take what's right for your practice. If you take the foot to the outside of the thigh or bend this knee, then you're just working into the hips a little bit more. It just offers you a bit more for the hips, but same benefits as far as twisting goes. So in a moment we'll come into a twist. It's a closed twist. So if for any reason you don't want to compress the abdomen, so common reasons are pregnancy or being on the heavy part of your period, but there's all kinds of reasons why you might not want to, then turn in the opposite direction to what I prompt, so you're in a more open twist. Okay, so hands are pressing against the right shin, and that press of the hands draws the right knee in towards you a little more, but also use the press of the hands to help you draw the shoulders back and down so that you can bring a bit more lift to the chest. Take an inhale, and then as you exhale, draw round to the right. So as you do that, you can let the left hand creep further round the right leg to keep hugging it in, and you can release the right hand comes to rest by the right hip. And once you've kind of made that movement, then settle into the breath. Inhaling, finding length in the spine, space in the side body. Exhaling, finding a softening down through the shoulders, all the way down through to the sit bones. Maybe see if you can notice how this feels in terms of that relationship between belly and chest. It might feel trickier to access that in a more kind of closed, compressed twist, but just see what you can notice, if anything. And there's quite a lot of holding that's going on here to support you. So whether that's the hugging in of the knee, whether it's what's going on in the hips, whether it's if you've got the leg straight, you're actively pushing out through that left heel. See if you can use the exhale to start to experience some of that as more like releasing, a natural sort of releasing down to the ground, so that you're kind of accessing that stability and energy of the ground to support you a little more. Great. Now inhale back to center. And then so you can either exhale and release here. If you're in this position, then you could always have a play around with that by making your way to the other side. So I think we've done this before, but I'll just talk through it. But just before I do, if you're in a position where the leg is straight, then just release and set yourself up for the other side. If you're here, then what you can do is take both hands over to the left now. So you're kind of making contact with the ground with your fingertips here, and then or with the palms of the hands, and then press into the hands to support you in then lifting the hips up, and then coming up onto the ball of each foot and pivoting round as you walk the hands all the way round, anti-clockwise, and then let your hip, or let your right hip come back down, and more or less anyway, you might find yourself in the same position but on the other side. So it's a fun one to play around with. So set up for the other side, be prepared for it to feel different and to take whatever option feels right for you on this side. And do check, particularly if you're bending the right knee, that you can still feel rooted through the left sit bone. I didn't say this on the other side, but you can always explore using a little bit of support underneath the left sit bone to make that happen. But if the sit bone is really high up off the ground, then, you know, really what that's saying to you is straighten the leg. So hands are against the left shin now. Use that press of the hands to hug the knee in towards you, but also to help you draw the shoulders back and down, bring a lift to the chest. So you're finding that length in the spine, length in the side body. Again, the more length we can find, then the more we can explore and find the benefits of the twist. Take an inhale. And then as you exhale, draw round towards the left. You can creep the right hand or right arm round, so you're still hugging the knee in. You can release the left hand to come to rest by the hip or the back, but keep it close to the body. And settling in here. Again, come back to the breath. Keep finding length and space in the body, so length in the spine, in the side body, perhaps noticing spaciousness across the chest, shoulder point to shoulder point. Keep finding a sense of softening and release on the exhale. And in doing so, you're really checking in with your rootedness, with your foundations here as you exhale down through to the sit bones, that sense of connection between the sit bones and the ground. Lovely. On your next inhale, draw back to center. And then as you exhale, unravel, release the legs. And you might want to just lean back a little and give the legs a little bit of a wiggle, or maybe a bit of a pummel. Just release a little. Again, we'll just come to a symmetrical pose to ease off after the twist. So we're going to make our way down onto our back for that. So grab anything that you might need for your Shavasana. So we're not quite at Shavasana yet, but grab anything that you need for your Shavasana so that you don't need to move off the mat again. Have that handy. And then make your way down onto your back. And just take a moment hugging your knees into your chest. Right. On your next exhale, bring feet back down onto the mat. So feet are hip width apart, fairly close up towards the bum. Soles of the feet pressing down into the mat. Have your arms resting alongside you. Press into the feet a little more, and then use that press on your next inhale to start to lift the lower back off the mat. exploring as you keep going with your inhale, peeling a bit more of your spine up off the mat. When you get to the exhale, just pause for a moment. See if you can soften through the shoulders, find that rootedness through the feet a little more. And then on the inhale, maybe explore peeling a bit more of the spine up off the mat, finding a sense of the hips really drawing up towards the ceiling. Keep pressing into the feet. And just pausing here for a few breaths now in your bridge pose, maybe tucking shoulders underneath you if that feels good, bringing a bit more space across the chest, maybe interlacing the fingers, drawing the sides of the hands down into the mat, using the press of the sides of the hands, just as you're using the feet to maybe help the hips lift a little more. Come back to the breath. If you've got fingers interlaced or shoulders tucked under, then release that now. And then use a long, slow exhale if you can to slowly replace the spine back onto the mat. Okay. And once the spine's back on the mat, hug the knees in one more time. And this time, take one hand onto each knee. Let the knees draw apart a little. So then you're still drawing them in towards you, but more in the direction of your armpit. So perhaps there's a bit more space to explore, drawing them in a bit more. And we're just inviting a little bit of opening around the hips and the groins after quite a lot of closed hip work. On your next exhale, bring the soles of the feet back down onto the mat. And then make your way into your Shavasana. So whatever that is for you today, just as you've started the session, just finding whatever position feels right for you, on your back, or but might also be on your side or your front, whatever feels right for you, so that you can be in a position where you can release as much as possible. And during your Shavasana today, coming back to that idea of the breath being, one of the simplest, purest examples of exploring that balance between energizing and releasing, between effort and ease, all of those things that we can, those relationships that we can think about. So I'd invite you in your Shavasana today to simply be with the breath, not controlling the breath in any way, but just noticing on the inhale where the space is, where the energy is. Noticing on the exhale where the release is, where the softening is. Just knowing that this space is held for you while you do that. Starting now to bring some deeper breaths into your body. Slowly bringing some movement back, maybe wiggling fingers and toes. Perhaps rotating wrists and ankles. Taking any movements now, any stretches, sighs, yawns. Anything that feels good as you bring your full awareness back to your body. Taking your time to slowly make your way back up to a comfortable seated position. Keeping your eyes closed or having your gaze soft as you do that. Once you're there, taking a moment, if you set an intention at the start of your practice, to recall that intention now. Bringing palms of the hands together in front of the heart. Taking a moment to be grateful to yourself for showing up for this practice today. And a moment for us to be grateful that we have this practice of yoga available to us, and that we have this way of connecting and practicing together. And I invite you to think of anything else in your life that you're grateful for right now. Bowing your head towards your fingertips. Namaste. Releasing when you're ready. Thank you, guys.